Hello everyone, this is Kudzie Nicolle Mapiye. I hope you're all doing well. I just wanted to come and do this quick video. I'm currently parked at the mall. I'm just about to go and do my shopping. But something happened this week that I just wanted to share. It's a bit of a rant, a bit of a story time, a bit of a reflection of, how African people are engaged with in foreign countries, or by other races in general. So the other day I was having a conversation with this lady that I know, and she's an Australian lady, and we were talking about my trip to Zimbabwe and the time I spent in Zimbabwe. And the first thing that she asked is, are things still bad over there? It just kind of like shocked me that that would be the first thing that she would hone in on. She said, are things still bad over there? Yeah, is the government still bad? And she went, like, you could tell she just wanted to go on and on about how bad things are in Zimbabwe. And before she could continue, I just stopped her and I told her that, there's so many good things about Zimbabwe. I wasn't even focused on that. And I went to tell her about all the wonderful things that I had experienced in Zimbabwe. And you could tell how her facial expressions, everything just changed, and she was more like looking at me in wonder, like, wow, that's wonderful. And then surprisingly, she said to me, I've actually been to Zimbabwe. I've been to Victoria Falls, and it was one of the best trips of my life. And I was so surprised. I was like, okay, first of all, you started talking to me about how bad Zimbabwe is, yet at the back of your mind you knew that one of the best trips that you've ever been to in your life, according to your own words, was in Zimbabwe. And it just made me reflect on the intentions of people when they talk to you about your country and basically about anything in your life, and they want to put a negative spin on it. And I think especially as Africans, we cop that a lot, that when people talk to us about our country, or when you say you're from Zimbabwe or whatever, any other African country, they quickly want to say something bad about that country. And, oh, is it safe over there? Or, how's the economy? Or all these bad things. And it's just strange to me because I could just never think of talking to someone about their country and the first thing I think about is how bad that country is. And it made me really reflect on what is this person's intention. And sometimes, like, judging on how the conversation went and what she said afterwards and just her change in expression, it just made me see that sometimes people engage in like negative conversations with you about an aspect of yourself or your country in order to dim something that is shining bright in you so that they can feel more comfortable in your presence. Like, sometimes it's a game of just lowering you a little bit, lowering your self-esteem, lowering how you feel about yourself, so that they can be comfortable to engage with you. Because sometimes, especially I've noticed with Africans, sometimes people who are not African, sometimes people of other races only feel comfortable engaging with Africans when Africans are seem inferior to them. When they have a sense of superiority over the African, they feel more confident to engage with that African person. I've seen it in a variety of settings, that if an African person walks in confident and bold, people are very reluctant to engage with them. They start to pick at them slowly, talk about where they come from, their country, how bad it is, how bad their people are, or even talk about what bad things Africans are doing in their country, and then so that they can slowly just chip at their confidence and just make themselves feel more comfortable in their presence. And I think it's always good to question people's intentions when they're focusing on a negative aspect about you. And I remember many years ago, when I was younger and people will engage with me on negative conversation about my country, and I would indulge them. They'll say, oh, are things still bad over there? I'm like, oh yes, things are so bad. And that conversation would go on and on and on, and I could tell as the conversation progressed, I feel worse about myself, and I can see that they start to feel more confident about themselves, because it's sometimes really a game of superiority and inferiority. And sometimes people, there's some people who cannot engage with someone who they feel is not inferior to them. They cannot feel confident in that way. They feel like, okay, if I'm going to be talking to you, I need to feel bigger than you. Otherwise, it's not worth talking to you. You know what I mean? And it happens a lot to Africans. I find that, you know, people always want to belittle Africans, like when they talk to them. So they talk to them like, you know, they're like your big brother or your big sister. Like they want to have that bigger thing when they're talking to you. And I think that it's time that, you know, as Africans, we just, you know, shut it down. As soon as it shows up, we shut it down very quickly. We're like, no. We are not inferior to you. We are not going to engage in conversations where we are going to feel inferior, because sometimes the end game is just, yes, you feel inferior, I feel superior. And then, you know, I feel better about myself, and in turn you feel bad about yourself, and let the day continue like that. But I think we should stand up for, you know, especially how we feel about ourselves, because sometimes people think, oh, you shouldn't always have to defend your country. Sometimes it's not about defending your country, but it's about defending your own self-esteem. Because when people talk about your country and they see, like, you know, they're actually wanting to take a dig at your self-esteem. Sometimes they don't even care about your country. They don't even care about what's happening in your country. All they care about is how you feel. They care about you, and you know, you're the person who's in front of them. They care about how you feel and how they feel about you. So sometimes we need to really look at the bigger picture and question intentions. It's just like, you know, in normal life, if something bad is happening in your life and you have someone who always wants to ask you about that thing, maybe you're having problems at work, maybe you're having problems in your relationship, in your family, in whatever setting, and you've got someone who always wants to ask you, oh, so how are things at work? And they already know things are bad at work, but it's like the moment they engage with you, the first thing they want to know is, how are things at work? And you can tell that it's not from a place of concern, but it's a place of like gathering information. They love to see you diminish in their sights. Like they love to see you just shrink. They love to see your confidence just come down in their presence. There are people like that, believe it or not. And I think the more we protect ourselves and how we feel about ourselves and our self-esteem, we will actually do better and achieve more in our lives, because there's no way you're going to be your best if you don't feel your best. There's no way you're going to achieve the best you can achieve if you don't feel good about yourself. So, you know, if you look at Africa, right now I'm about to get into the mall, and I can guarantee you, this is in Australia, I will get into a shop where they are playing Afrobeats. Guaranteed. Afrobeats are being played everywhere, in restaurants, in everywhere, like shops, clothing shops. They're always, you know, playing Afrobeats these days. Like Afrobeats have just become this big thing. People love it, and I love it for Africa and how it's having a positive impact in other countries. But guaranteed, people are not going to engage with you about, oh, how good your music is in Africa, or, you know, how great your natural environment is in Africa, all the good things. Mostly when people who are not Africans want to engage with Africans, they want to talk to them about a negative aspect first, and it's only when that African person chooses to flip that script and say, no, I'm not going to engage you in that conversation, then they'll talk about something positive. So it's surprising that the positive things are there, they're in them, but they're just, you know, they're not going to bring them out voluntarily most of the time. They're waiting for you to flip the switch and say, no, I'm not going to engage about, you know, negative things about my country, as if you don't have negative things about your life. You know, I think sometimes people should concern themselves with their father's relatives, their bank accounts. Like, concern yourself with your own problems and don't be quick to divulge into other people's problems, because one thing I know for a fact is that misery loves company. Unhappy people love to make others unhappy, and you know, people just, a lot of people, and there are a lot of unhappy people in this world at the moment, unfortunately. So be very careful, especially like if you're an African and you're living in a foreign country and you're living your best life, you're enjoying yourself, don't let people dim your light. Like, don't let people come to you about some nonsense about African economies and whatever else, as if there are no negative stories in their own news. Like, no. I think it's time that we just pull the plug on that one and say, no, we're not going to tolerate that. There is so much good coming out of Africa, especially now, that it cannot allow us to dwell on negative stories about Africa. African people are becoming more confident, and you're not going to dim their light by engaging them in conversation about negative things happening in their country. We need to stand up and say, no, we're going to talk about what's positive. We're going to talk about what's good, and we're going to protect our self-esteem. We're going to protect our pride, who we are as Africans, which goes beyond just the countries we come from and their economies. It's in our essence, like, our ancestors and ancestors being African, like, it goes to, like, questioning who you are as a person. Because sometimes when people do that, the aim is really to shake you at the core, like to shake who you are as a person, how you feel about yourself as a person. And we should not be entertaining those kinds of conversations. There's so much good that is happening in Africa. And the other thing that I've seen that it's working. It's working how people are always talking negative things about Africa and engaging Africans in negative conversations about their own country. Look at how Africans are talking about their own country these days. Like, a lot of people have so many negative things to say, even publicly, about their own countries, as if their own countries are the only countries in the world with problems. But it's sometimes a script, and it's part of, a big strategy of people trying to make Africans feel small and continually make them feel small. So it's first them talking to you in a way that makes you feel small, and then it's you talking to fellow Africans in a way that makes them feel small, and we start fighting each other about silly things. So we should really think about it, and think about what we talk about, what we focus on when it comes to our countries, when it comes to who we are as Africans. Make sure that if someone talks to you, like wants to have a conversation with you about Africa, about being African, make sure you throw as many positive things as you can into that conversation. Doesn't matter how they want to dwell on something negative, make sure that you, as the African, throw in as much positivity into that conversation that it drowns all the negativity. Because at the end of the day, it's about who we are. It's about how we carry ourselves. It will impact how we feel about ourselves. And I always say, protect the things that are important to you with your life. Protect your dignity, protect your mental health, protect your self-esteem with your life. Like, protect it with everything that you have, because it's not worth losing those things for someone just to feel better about themselves or to feel superior. It's not worth it. It's not worth you feeling bad about yourself in order for someone to feel good about themselves. Because at the end of the day, someone stands to gain something by engaging you in negative conversation, and you stand to lose something by continuing to engage in that conversation. So yeah, I just found it so interesting how once I started talking about the beautiful things about Zimbabwe, this person actually joined me and started talking about how beautiful Zimbabwe is. And I'm like, wow, what a shock. Like, what a change, what a flip. Like, there you were talking about how bad the economy is, and now you're talking about how Zimbabwe is the best place you've ever been in your life. And this person has traveled a bit, but they still maintain that Victoria Falls was the best place they've ever been. And they said, given the chance to travel, I would choose Africa. And there you were, trying to engage me about Africa in a negative way, as if I was going to join you. If I had joined them, if I had indulged them, best believe we would have been talking 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes about all the negative things about Africa. And I would have left that conversation feeling down, feeling like my light has dimmed, feeling so bad about myself, so bad about my people, so bad about my country. But I think after having lived in Zimbabwe and seen the beauty of Zimbabwe, I will never engage anybody in that kind of conversation where they have so much negative to say about my country or my people. Like, I have seen it with my own two eyes, how my people are succeeding, how things are happening, how, you know, black excellence is just flourishing in Africa, in Zimbabwe. So I will not be engaging anyone in any negative conversations about Africa or Zimbabwe. It does nothing for me. It does nothing for how I want to feel about myself. It does nothing about how I want to see myself. So sometimes, you know, focus on the big picture. Sometimes a conversation is about much more than what you're talking about. Sometimes a conversation is about how your essence as a person and the things that you're supposed to protect about yourself. And that's not to say that you should turn a blind eye on everything that's negative that's happening in your country. You should turn a blind eye and just say, oh, this country is so perfect. That's not to say that. It's to say, when you talk to people about yourself and your country, like, people are not going to come to you. Like, I've never had an Australian come to me and say, oh, you know, Australia is just so bad. Australia is the worst place on earth. Australia is just like, I just wish I was in Australia. I've never had an Australian have a conversation like that to me. Maybe they can have a conversation about that amongst themselves. I don't know, but they've never engaged me in such a conversation. And they always have such pride about their country, and they're always saying, you know, we're glad to be here, we're glad to be Australia, or Australia is the best place on earth, as if it doesn't have any problems. But they do not focus and dwell on their problems. And I think, you know, we can learn a thing or two about people who have national pride and how they talk about their countries and the kind of conversations they engage in. Like, even Americans, like, I have seen some Americans who have so much pride. I think one of the, you know, nationalities that I have encountered who have so much pride about themselves and their country is Americans. Americans are proud, even when they come, like, even when I've seen Americans in Brisbane, like, Americans, you can tell even by the pitch of their voice, like, they speak loudly, they speak confidently. Like, you're not going to talk to them about how bad America is. They're not going to tolerate that. They're not going to engage you with, you know, when you're talking about that. So, you know, sometimes we should learn about people who have become proud of their countries, despite all the problems that they might be facing, despite all the negative things that may be going on in their country, or that they themselves might have experienced in their country. They do not go out there and, you know, talk about how bad they are, you know. And it's just like, think about even your family. You don't go talking about, you know, how bad your family is and, you know, all those kind of things. A lot of people have a sense of pride in their families. Not to say that people don't have negative things happen to them in families and stuff like that, but people have also, like, you know, they talk about the positive things about their families, because they know essentially how they talk about their families and how the people view their families will have an impact on them and how those people see them. And have you seen how people love to get you to carry on and on and on and on and on and on and on about something negative in your life? Some of the longest conversations that I've had in my life are about negative things. Very rarely have I had very, very long conversation about positive things. And sometimes it's just human nature. People gravitate towards, you know, negativity and talking about negative things. And at the end of the day, at the end of those long negative conversations, you feel drained. You don't feel good about yourself. So it just shows you that negativity doesn't breed anything positive within you and for you. So what's the point? And, you know, if you're not going to feel good about yourself at the end of the conversation, what's the point of having the conversation? So I just want to say to all those Africans who might be living in foreign countries, all those Africans who might be living in Africa, who are engaging in conversations with people who are not Africans, who want to talk to you about negative things about Africa, please be quick to remind them about all the positive things that they are, about Africa. And if you have got nothing to say positive, maybe you should start questioning the things that you have been ingesting, the things that you've been watching, the things that you've been engaging in that have made you feel like there is nothing positive about Africa. There's nothing positive about our music, about our art, about our entrepreneurship. There's nothing positive about, you know, just Africa. If you think there isn't, then start to think about what you've been consuming and you might get the answer. But I just want people to have a sense of national pride, a sense of self-pride and self-esteem about being Africans, because that's the way that you're going to achieve more in your life and feel good and be good and just, you know, just excel. You're not going to do that if you're always in negativity about who you are and where you come from. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you in the next one.